past the start time, we will just get cracking. So thank you very much, first and foremost, everyone, for registering, whether you're here today watching it live or whether you're watching the recording. Really appreciate you taking the time to check this out and come along. As a very brief introduction, my name's Jack Teal. I'm the co-founder of the Early Adopters Hub, along with Johan, who's here as well. A very quick intro for those who maybe don't know anything about me. I am an accountant, chartered accountant, I suppose, still. Spent my time working in practice, from doing audits to doing tax returns for small businesses, all of the stuff in between as well. So I suppose I've got the experience on the accounting side, but I have a really deep passion for technology and software, and eventually made the move and transitioned from doing the accounting work to working with accounting software, joining FYI a couple of years ago, which is an Adelaide-based accounting tech startup. And that's actually where I met Johan. So a couple of years later, here we are doing this, working for accountants and working for startups together, and the accounting industry as a whole. So I might actually hand it over to you, Johan, to give a little bit more context on all of that and explain why we're here today. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. And thanks, Jack, for organizing everything and doing an amazing job on that for this webinar and all the other webinars as well. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, I'm Johan, a co-founder of the Early Adopters Hub, as Jack mentioned, which started now a little bit over 2 years ago. We work with early stage startups. I've worked with 23 startups to date, including the latest round that we just started. And we've got a community of 70 accountants between the UK and Australia. And really we focus about connecting those early stage startups with the right innovative accountants in a structured way to accelerate their product market fit. As far as today's webinar, so this is the second webinar in this series. We had a really good first webinar with accountants being quite open and quite honest about what they love and hate about vendors. Potentially there was a bit more hate than love, but still that's important for the vendors to hear. With the Early Adopters Hub, we do believe we're honestly in a unique position with our perspective. This isn't sponsored by any vendor. Our agenda is basically to offer value to early stage startups and other people in this space. So our incentive is really to have an open and honest conversations with panelists, hopefully, and not holding anything back. The big firms is an interesting topic. I think if I use John here, which I remember said that in one of the startup sessions that we had, a lot of startups, especially in the early stage, when they see a big firm, they see a dollar sign in their eyes as soon as they hear how many clients. But it's a lot more complicated than that. There's a lot more nuances. It's a double-edged sword quite often, and it's important to understand those nuances. The opportunity is great, but you need to do it the right way. So hopefully you'll get a lot of insight today from both the UK, both Australia. It'll be interesting to see how similar it is, how different it is between our different panelists. So I think it's enough of an intro, Jack, so I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Johan. Well said, obviously. And just the last couple of words before I hand it over to our panelists to introduce themselves. The chat is going to be open, so feel free to throw any questions you've got in there. We'll make sure we keep some time aside at the end to answer any specific questions that you guys might have. If you have anything, no stress if you don't. But yeah, I guess with all that being said, I'd really like to thank our panelists, Gina, John, Ryan, and Stacey, all of whom have a lot of experience in this space with respect to working with big firms, implementing new tech, trying to keep their finger on the pulse with, some very large teams. So without further ado, I suppose I'll hand it over to each of them, starting with you, Gina, to basically give a quick introduction and explain why you're here today.
Hi, everyone. My name's Gina. I work at RSM. About 12 years ago, I started my role in admin, so I'm actually not an accountant by trade. I actually found myself automating a lot of my role because I didn't like doing the same thing over and over again. And very fortunate that I was given an opportunity to move into a project role at RSM. So I've worked on a couple of I focus mainly on internal apps and looking at our internal app ecosystem and getting us all onto the cloud. So we've recently progressed from MYOB AE to a full cloud app ecosystem, and I've been the lead on a few of the apps in that app ecosystem going forward. But it's definitely been a massive team effort from the RSM team. And yeah, that's why I'm here today.
Cool. John, if you don't mind going.
Hey everyone, John Toon from Beaver and Struthers, mid-sized firm based in the northwest of the UK. And my job title, my job role now is around our technology strategy and trying to improve all of our internal processes and systems, help our people to become more efficient, take some of the pressure off them, and also an outward-facing role with clients in terms of helping them do similar things. But before that, I'm an accountant, auditor by trade. Was a senior audit manager, which basically means that I was much older than all the other managers. Yeah, that's kind of what I do. And I've been involved in technology pretty much since cloud burst into the scene in the UK. Gosh, what, like 10, 12 years ago now, and you know, really embedded into the Xero ecosystem and everything that goes on in that space.
Cool. Over to you, Ryan.
Ryan Piercy, director at Scott & Bland, which is a mid-tier accountancy firm in the southeast of the UK. I have been, I guess I trained at a small accountancy firm, so only 2 partners. Moved to a top 20 firm after around 9 years. So experienced the pains of working in a very large firm, and then I've moved to what we class a mid-tier firm in the UK, so around between 15 and 20 partners. I am a self-declared tech geek as well as being an accountant, and I run our HP Digital service, which is about bringing in cloud-based technology to small and medium-sized businesses. But as well as that, I've worked on projects internally trying to streamline our processes as well.
Fantastic.
Hey everyone, my name is Stacey. I work for PKF Newcastle and Sydney. PKF is an alliance of independent firms. So I'm here representing Newcastle, Sydney, Central Coast, and we have an office in Hyderabad. So we've got 380 seats across those 4 offices. We're multidisciplinary, and we recently went through a significant project to move from desktop-based practice management software to cloud-based in a hub and spoke model with a bunch of different apps plugged in. That's how I came to meet Jack when he was at FYI. Like Ryan, I'm a very self-aware nerd and love this stuff. So I do it on top of my day job. So accountant by trade, similar to some of these guys. Started with the firm 17 years ago as a trainee, worked through a few different roles, including our internal finance. And like Gina, as a firm, we generally have a fairly low tolerance for repetitive or minimal value tasks, anything that involves double data entry. So we're the project at the moment all about integrations and protecting our single source of truth that feeds out from there. So thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you all for being here. And I suppose hopefully for those of you listening, that speaks to the credibility of everyone here as to why they are the right people to be speaking on this topic. So to jump right in, and Ryan, I'm going to pick on you for the first question, and then we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes. So guys, just jump in as you see fit. But I think one of the bigger things that I'm keen to kind of get your perspective on as people in bigger, quote unquote, bigger firms is, how do you define a big firm? Where should vendors be drawing the line? Is there such a line that exists to say, hey, this is a small firm and this is a big firm?
Yeah, I don't think there's a solid line. I think it's going to be a lot about the structure of the firm. So I guess once you start getting to a certain size as an accounting firm, you start getting multiple locations, multiple offices, and segregate departments. And once you start doing that, and you've got departmental heads, they start, I guess, what they want internally from a tech perspective starts differing from other departments, and that's where you get added complexities. Trying to bring an overarching strategy together is very challenging. Personally, I think you've got 2 different classes of big firms. I think you've got ones right at the top where they've got a very corporate structure, and you've got what we class in the UK as a mid-tier firm, where you can still kind of potentially know most people in the firm, and there's a little bit more of a transition period from, I guess, that dynamic approach to a very corporate approach. But that brings with it a lot of complexities as well. And I'd say anything 10 partners and above, maybe around there, possibly even less than that, you're hitting that mid-tier space. And 25, 30 partners above is kind of maybe when you're hitting the really, really big space.
Does anyone else have any other definition, anything else they need to add to what Ryan said there?
Yeah, I'll chip in. So RSM is one partnership. So we have 30 offices around the country. So the way we roll out any of our implementations is we've got an internal team, and that team then goes out and rolls out to all 30 offices. So given that we're all part of one partnership and we all do things, we've aligned all our processes into one project team to roll them out. I think that probably does give us a little bit of a definition of big. Like Ryan mentioned, there are many different ideas, personalities, processes of how things are being done currently versus how we want them to be done going forward. So I think definitely, I don't think there's a solid definition of big firm, but I think when you're looking at just the sheer volume of what RSM has, I think that probably does put us in a big category. So yeah, I think that's, yeah, definitely partnership structure does play a big role.
Jumping on that, I think you're definitely right. When you get to a certain size, you do have those, you've got the resource to have those internal teams that help roll things out. And I think there's that middle gap where you've got the complexities involved, but you've not got the budget to have an internal team. So trying to, I guess, engage with the right people becomes a challenge as well.
Add to what you were saying as well, Gina, I think as soon as you've got multidisciplinary firms where you've got things like independence requirements, and I think as a big firm, I think for us, what makes us that complicated, I think, is that we want to have it both ways, right? We want Chinese walls and we want, security granularity, but we also don't want to have, duplicated data and duplicated client records. So I think the thing that becomes quite important for vendors that I've found is being able to handle the multiple instances and be able to segregate them in appropriate ways while still keeping the integration. And it seems to me to come mostly down to security granularity. So the ability to assign different security tokens to different people for different purposes, while still letting us stick to governance principles that, so applying least privilege and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a big challenge for a small vendor who might be delivering something off the shelf, which makes me, I suppose, ask the question: is it even possible for you guys to implement a piece of software that's generally off the shelf?
I think it is, but I think the key thing is about making sure you make the right choice. I think for a lot of firms, the ideal solution is to pick something straight off the shelf and being able to roll it out, because that's the lowest cost implementation in terms of the hassle factor, the training factor, integrations, etc. I think the challenge is that a lot of certainly new products that come into the market are very much designed for the cloud first, smaller firms, and are integrating into the apps that those kind of firms work, and are not necessarily considering that the legacy products that larger firms will have, and some of the problems that we've already talked about in terms of data integration, security, etc. But I think in general, most of what mid-tier firms certainly are doing in the UK, at least, is that they are trying to buy off the shelf and not trying to do too much bespoke work.
What is it? Do you see a benefit from your end after maybe spending years trying to get vendors to do what you want? Are you saying now you actually want to go the other way and try to make things work around the software?
From our point of view, we tend to work quite heavily with vendors, that have a product that we think fits for us, and try and shape that product in terms of having some very high level engagement with potentially the ownership of that product, certainly the product ownership and the support teams around that, so that we can then help shape how that looks going forward, and make sure that if there's anything that if there's a bit of a wrinkle in the product in terms of it's causing us a potential problem for implementation, that we can work with them to kind of try and solve that and prioritize that. And increasingly, I think vendors are engaging more and more in that kind of way, in terms of they realize that there is a set of defined capabilities throughout the accountancy market in terms of where you can go with that. But I think having that kind of collaborative approach is really important. The challenge, I think the ironic challenge, is that once you get into products like Xero, for example, or QuickBooks, or some of the larger, sort of more established products, is actually you start to lose that connection, and there's a separation there. And we've got challenges here in the UK in terms of some cybersecurity risk issues that we want to address with Xero, which I'm finding like incredibly difficult to manage, which will have a potential impact on us in terms of going forward in the future.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I was just going to say, as far as the question of is it possible to implement out of the box, so similar to what John was saying, we try and avoid customizations where we can. I know if any of my vendors are listening to this, they'll laugh because it sounds untrue, but I think we don't want customizations for us. And I think largely most accounting firms, big, small, have similar problems and therefore similar solutions to those problems. So if I'm asking for a customization, I'm generally not doing it in a way that's PKF specific. I'm doing it in a way that here's the issue, here is the way that all other firms, and I deliberately collaborate with Gina specifically and a bunch of other firms about, are you guys having this issue? This is the suggestion I'm going to make about how to fix it. Do you guys like that? So that it's the software guys building it into their tech rather than making it as a specific customization for us and a slightly different one for RSM and slightly, because we don't want customizations that have to be refreshed every time there's a new release or any of that kind of stuff either.
Yeah, I definitely echo that, and I think I think we must all of us must have brought in out the off-the-shelf products. I think the key thing is that the issues or nuances that we bring up that we want to be changed are those that would also affect smaller firms. It's just we've got the governance and I guess the risk management capabilities to come in and go, actually, this needs to be looked at, this needs to be changed. Whereas the smaller firms, they're just looking at what's the user experience, what's like the direct impact. We're looking at actually what's the risk exposure of something going wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what do you guys expect in terms of that level of engagement and collaboration with the vendors? What do you need from them? What aren't you getting from them that you'd like?
I'm looking at Stacey and she's looking at me because no, just to echo to Stacey's point, I think we generally, Stacey will bounce an idea off me and I'll say, yes, us too. So it's generally, I don't think we ever ask for anything bespoke anymore. But what I think vendors need to see is that there is so much value in if two firms are coming to you saying, here's what we want. We've basically done the R&D for you. It's not that we're asking for, and I think gone are the days where, people ask for a pretty green button in the right-hand side to do this and a pretty button for that. I think now we're probably very far into our cloud journey that we actually now when we ask for something, it's to cater for something that is stopping or roadblocking a job. So I think we should all be taking advantage of the information that we're passing on to vendors because it's firsthand and we've got the volume of staff going through and doing these tasks every day and using these apps every day to say, here is what needs to be fixed to streamline the process or make it better.
And to flip the question too, Jack, in terms of you just said, what should we expect of vendors? I think to be fair to vendors, what should they expect of us? So I would think it incredibly unreasonable for me just to go to a vendor and say, I want this for PKF. So I think what vendors can reasonably expect is what I try to do for ours, where I go, here's the issue, here's the three solutions that I've thought of that could fix it. This is the one that I think is the best. This is why. I've checked it with a couple of other firms who agree or who actually added this to it. Also, by the way, here's the link to the legislation that we're trying to comply with. Here's the link to whatever. Here's an extract from our internal policy. So I try and go to them, I suppose, in a way to make it very difficult for them to say no, right?
Yeah.
But also the idea being that if I'm having that conversation with the product manager, he can then take it to his dev team and he looks good, right? Or she, I should say, because then it's a case of, here's my scope. Like we've gone as far as we can to draft the scope and make it easy for the vendor. So I think it's probably reasonable for vendors to push back a little bit. I know that ours definitely do. If we just go and go, I want this. Okay, why? Why do you want that? And what problem does it fix for my market? Because we also get that vendors are trying to provide the best solution for the most number of people. Because obviously revenue is often volume driven. We get that. So I don't think it's unfair for to expect us to play to that.
Yep.
Jack, I'm just wondering because I saw John smile there a little bit. Do you basically agree? Is it the same in the UK or is it slightly different?
I think some vendors are better at working with the larger firms. I think there's still a bit of an issue. I mean, you kind of stole my thunder earlier, Johan, when I was talking about, I think we are past the days of apps coming to you and going, oh wow, you've got like 4,000 clients, that's amazing, and the ka-ching, and then you burst the bubble by telling them that you've only got about 300 or 400 on cloud, and then actually you've only got about 10 on Xero or something, and it becomes an incredibly entertaining discussion after that. But I think what we want from vendors is we want a collaborative relationship. Effectively, we know that we're a pain in the ass to deal with, right? We know that when you sell to us, we're slow, we're sticky, it takes ages to make decisions. We have problems with implementation and rollout and users and multiple offices and all the other stuff that comes with us. So there's a lot of baggage, right? It's not like going to maybe a smaller firm is much more agile and could basically go, right, I'll take that product and we'll roll it out in a week. That's never going to happen in our space. But what we want, as sort of Stacey and Gina said, is that we know that these vendors are trying to serve a wider market. Clearly that's the opportunity. But what we want is to make sure that there are things within that product that fix a problem for us, because otherwise it's just going to create more barriers and more blockages in terms of implementation. And that's why, going back to the previous conversation, it's about making sure you choose the right product. And part of that choosing the right product is about choosing people that you can get on with, who will work on that relationship with you and are willing to listen. And again, that's why certainly for me anyway, I like to go in as high up as possible in the chain, so that we know that we've kind of got a level of conversation influence. And those people don't always have to listen to us, because sometimes we're asking for things that are unreasonable, but we need to at least have that dialogue, to be able to engage and sort of say, right, well, this is a kind of a must-have, this is a nice to have, this is going to cause us an issue in the future. And and I think the other side of that is also just understanding more about the roadmap. We're used to, certainly in the UK, we're used to legacy providers saying, oh yeah, we're going to be fully cloud in 3 to 5 years, and we're going to be rolling this out in the next, in Q1 and Q2, and then of course there's tons and tons of slippage, and that's always the case with the newer cloud vendors as well. But at least those kind of conversations are much more open in terms of, here's what we're trying to achieve, here's what we're trying to do, where do we work on this and prioritize. And I think one of the areas that works really well for that in the UK is around audit tech. The audit tech partners that we deal with are incredibly engaged with us, and not just us, but other similar sized firms in the UK, and talking on a collaborative basis in the same kind of way that maybe Stacey and Gina are doing in Australia, and getting us around the table and saying, right, okay, here's what we're doing, this is how we're trying to address legislation changes. What do you guys think? What's causing you a problem with the product, or where do you think this product should go?
I think adding on that, John, as you said, like, we're quite sticky with what we use, because it's a pain in the ass to change anything because of the amount of hurdles we have to get through. So if you do stay with us for that journey, and you do get your product in with a big firm, you're pretty likely to stay with us for a long time. So it can be very worth the investment, because once you're in, there's a massive hassle of changing to someone else. Even if you do mess up, we can be quite forgiving, as long as you want to work with us still to develop or solve whatever that problem was.
I think there's a key.
Brian, you want to encourage people to mess up? I'll retract that comment from you.
I think there's just a key. There's a key thing in there though as well, is that there's a difference between our internal apps and our external client-facing apps. So like internal apps, yeah, absolutely, we will probably try and pick something and roll it out, implement it, and we'll want to stick with that. That's not to say, I think again, a lot of firms are quite savvy now. That's not to say that we make a decision and then it's 10 years before we change our practice technology. That's no longer the case anymore. We're not kind of, we're not once a decade purchases anymore. But when it comes to our when it comes to our client-facing technology, I think you've also got to understand that most firms are, certainly the larger firms, are quite agnostic. Certainly we are very agnostic. So when it comes to simple stuff like OCR technology, yes, we have partnerships with the major players, and we probably prefer one over the others. But we're not kind of going to go down this single solution route that maybe smaller firms do. And the consequence, of course, is that means that you don't maybe get the same level of concentration and the same ability to kind of sell 400 licenses into one product, because those 400 licenses might spread across 2 or 3 products, for example, because we try and pick the best solutions for our clients and the complexity of our clients and the different areas that they work in and the different systems that they have requires us to do implementations that are much more bespoke for them.
That's an interesting conversation in itself around client related software versus just the apps that you're using internally to the practice. Can you guys tell us a little bit about that process? Obviously protecting a client relationship and recommending an app that doesn't deliver, that's something completely different to implementing an app in your own practice that doesn't quite deliver. Are there extra precautions in place? Is it a harder process to kind of get the tick of approval to get an app rolled out in your best practice stack to your clients, or is it relatively easy?
We actually have, so as part of like our transition to the cloud, we actually formed a digital advisory team. So we actually have a dedicated team of people that don't necessarily go to clients with, it's flipping the conversation. So it's not about a client Googling and saying, I think this app works for me. It's actually about understanding the client and what they need. So you do have to remain agnostic, because we're not trying to sell a one app or a one size solution or a one ecosystem fits all. It's really about understanding the client need. So it's flipping that conversation to meet with the client, say, right, what is it that we're trying to solve for you, before we go and start and giving the clients recommendations on where we think we should go. So it's actually, I think we need to flip that conversation and actually really understand the needs of the clients, because you'll find that when you get to implementation phase, that's when the client goes, what's this? Or, and I can flip it as an internal rollout as well, that really understanding the solution that we're trying to offer is key to any app. So it might be that there isn't an app, a specific app doesn't solve the problem that the client's looking for. So it's very hard to say. I think that's why all accounting firms have to remain agnostic.
I think when it comes to doing like client implementations, actually for a lot of firms, that's easier than doing internal stuff, because clients come to us and say, right, come on, John, I've got this problem. This is what I want to try and achieve, and we can go away and do the research, look at how we fix that problem for them, look at how we implement that system for them. And then certainly quite a few firms, certainly Ryan's doing this really well, and is that you can then design that process, design that implementation, and the clients are buying off us and saying, yeah, okay, we trust you. And we very rarely have an implementation that fails for a client. But when it comes to internal stuff, yeah, we do have problems around that because of all the problems we've spoken about. But I think we certainly now take a problem sort of solution approach, if you like, to these things. And as Gina said, you've got to be massively agnostic, because you can't put something from the zero app system into a £100 million turnover business, because it's just crazy. It doesn't work. It's not the right fit. So you do have to be agnostic, and that, I suppose that's the unique challenge for firms that are doing more of that kind of systems advisory work, is that you've then got to be across much more of the ecosystem, because you'll have clients in multiple sectors, multiple niches, multiple sizes, and there's lots going on that you've got to be across.
Stacey.
I was just going to say, by way of advice to vendors, particularly their sales team, don't salesman us, right? There's no quicker way to have me slam the door shut and never want to speak to you or your product or anyone in your team than to come at me like a salesman, particularly with, like you said at the start, Jack, about, oh, it's a big firm, there's big dollars, whether it's selling to us for our internal or to our clients. I think back in the day, there used to be the strategy of, oh, look, you can buy the product and on-sell it, and we'll give you a discount based on the amount of volume that you sell to your clients. And, we can keep that discount, whatever. So the two or three things I would probably say is, as a firm, we generally, we don't keep discounts. We pass, if we get a provider discount, we pass that on to our clients. Number two, legislation's changed in New South Wales recently anyway, that even if we did want to do that, we have to disclose it to the client. So, and that's as it should be, right? But number three, as a big firm, where we and probably everyone on this call is very used to being targeted by salespeople just because we are PKF or we are RSM. And what the vendors may or may not realize is that we run interference for each other. Gina literally rang me last week or the week before to say, I've got this guy who wants to speak to you. He's asked me for your details, and we literally run interference for each other because it just happens all the time. So I don't want to tell you just what not to do. The answer to what to do is be the best at what you do, be good at it, And we will, if we find out about you, don't come at it from a sales pitch, come at it from a, let me show you why we're good and why we solve a problem for you or your clients, and then let us sell you on merit rather than on some kind of incentive scheme.
And on that point, if you find a good product, so there's people here listening who are building have a good product, will eventually build a good product. If they manage to convince you and implement it in your firm and they do a really good job, what are the odds of spreading the word on their behalf?
100%. I'll do it for free every day of the week. Do you know what I mean? Like, make us a raving fan and you do not have to incentivize us to sell your product.
Yep.
And
It's
I
not
think
only just
I'd add to
that.
that.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I'd add to that as well, right? So we don't have to implement a product at early stage. It may not be the right fit for us when you're a brand new startup and you're still scaling up. Okay, so it may be that actually it's best not to go after the mid-sized firms, even if we've got thousands of users and all that kind of exciting stuff, because you'd be better placed going into the smaller firms, building that scale, building the revenue, etc. And maybe 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is down the line, you'll go for it because you've then establish yourself, got a little bit more behind you. That's fine. Like we see lots of stuff coming through the early adopters. I get approached by lots of early stage startups elsewhere. If you've got an amazing product, I will be all over it. I'll be tracking it. I'll be watching how you progress and grow. And I'm more than happy to shout about how incredible it is, even if it's not appropriate for our firm at this point in time. But I'll still be keeping a track on it because it interests me, it excites me, and it's what I really enjoy doing.
Awesome. Jeannie,
The only other thing I was going to say is we know that we're slow. Like you said before, Jack, we know that we're slow. Most of us are doing this tech stuff on top of other day jobs. So don't be discouraged. There's one vendor on here in particular that I'm looking at that I know I owe a lot of emails and calls to. Don't be discouraged if you're not hearing back from us. It's not that we've gone cold. It's not that we're not interested in your product anymore. It's just that we're busy and we're just trying to fit all this stuff on top of. Despite that, still don't salesman us.
Absolutely.
And I think I think this is one of the things that's certainly changing in the UK market, is we're starting to see more and more firms have dedicated people in a role, similar to what I'm doing, where they're stripping away the client distractions, getting rid of those portfolios, and then being able to spend more time on doing stuff, or doing what Ryan's doing, where they've got a bespoke team doing at least the client-facing side of systems implementations for clients. And that is one of the things that does set us apart. But I think it was, as Stacey or Gina said, the challenge is for vendors is trying to get in front of the right person in the organizations, maybe not always clear who those people are and what they're doing. I mean, some of us clearly are out there and have a profile, but other firms it's maybe not as easily recognized. But that's a key challenge, because the problem for vendors is if you get in front of the wrong person and have conversations with someone, that will never go anywhere. And also mid-tier firms are terrible at talking to each other in terms of like internal communication. I mean, Stacey and Gina talk all the time, which blows my mind, but there'll be people in our organization probably having conversations with vendors who won't tell me, and then I'll talk to them maybe 3 months later, like, oh, we've already spoken to you guys and we're doing something. I'll be like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? Like, so that's also one of the challenges, is like, we don't have great internal systems in terms of managing that level of engagement. Hopefully that's my role now for our firm, but other firms are very much like that, and we were in the past.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think it did take a while when we looked at consolidating how we go to how vendors come to us. It did take a very long time because there were a lot of key contacts with a lot of different apps around the country, and it does take quite a bit of time for that information to start channeling into the right teams. But once it does start channeling, it doesn't stop. So once the floodgates opened, now my floodgates are very wide open. The phone never stops ringing. So I think, yeah, it does happen organically over time. It just takes quite a bit of time for people to see how the onboarding experience works, how a project works, and then by the time organically, you'll find that it just naturally falls back in the right hands.
Really good insight, guys. Johan, you had some.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in another question in the mix. It's just something you all touched on a little bit, but I think it is worth diving a bit deeper, because that's something that from my perspective, I think has definitely changed in the last couple of years. And that's how, and I don't think that's even just a big firm. I think that's all accountants, how they look at tech and evaluate it. What I think it used to be, there's a lot of shiny new tools, or you want to try a bit of everything and you get a lot of promises from vendors, so you give it a try. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. And you touched on it. It's like, it's becoming more about the pain points you're experiencing internally and with the clients. And again, even from our perspective, we get a lot of new startups that when we take them through our evaluation process, and you know, one of the initial questions is what unique value do you offer? And they're like, we kill Excel and help you grow your revenue, and you can do advisory if you use our product. And we're like, ugh, that doesn't mean anything anymore these days. It's almost like a beauty pageant where they ask, what do you bring that's unique to the world? I want world peace. That's what I want. So I think there is really that shift now that obviously you don't get a lot of clients tell you like, oh, John, I need to kill Excel tomorrow. What do you have? Well, I want to grow. Like, okay, give me everything you need to grow. It's more specific and pain point related. So what's your process now looking at it? Because there's so much noise in this space and you're more specific and more focused. How do you approach it of still finding that right take in all that noise that's out there?
I think timing is everything. I would say, as I think John mentioned earlier, we need to keep a very broad awareness of everything that's going on in the market, because we will come into a conversation where someone's talking about something and we need to know where that solution is. So I engage with so many different software, and it could be 2 years before something comes up and I go, okay, now this solves that pain point. But once I've then brought it in, we now have that knowledge base, and it's actually, and the experience and potentially the case study that I can talk to the rest of the firm about, that makes it a lot easier to then bring that product in for other clients. Because no one wants to be that first one, the test case. So it's really hard to find that initial client, or us internally, that where we hit that point we're like, actually let's go for this, because the risk is now far less compared to actually the problem we're suffering. And once it's in, then generally we have big traction. There's the product at the moment that it's taken probably about, since I came across the product, it was probably 4 years ago, and I've tried many times to get it in, and only in this year have I now got traction, and it's starting to snowball. So it can happen. You have to persist.
The other advice I'd give is integrate as widely as possible. So it's very rare that someone says we need something and I sit down and Google to find it. It's more a case of I'll be chatting to a different vendor and I'll be going, hey, do you know anyone that solves this? Or, oh, this is not great. It'd be awesome if we could have that. And if they're not willing to build it into theirs, they very often will say, talk to, and make introductions that way. Similarly, like again, RSM, William Buck, all the guys, we do talk, and deliberately, I think we foster a network deliberately, so that we can come at vendors, jointly, as I said before, but also for our own benefit. Or, call Gina, hey, what do you guys use for this? Or, John, what do you guys use for this? So the wider you integrate, open and well-documented APIs, please, from day one. Don't release a new feature without the API endpoints being available. And I only know enough about this terminology to sound dangerous. I rely heavily on our IT guys, but if you don't have an API, I pretty much won't talk to you.
I think actually that's probably something I'm guessing we're probably all quite passionate about. It's focus on what you're really good at. Don't try and broaden your software. Focus on what you're really good at and connect into other things that enhance what you do, and form partnerships, not necessarily a direct integration, but something where you both share maybe a sector that you're in, and then form a partnership and go out together, because your marketing will just overlap and you've got better chance of selling together. We're starting to see that a lot more in tech out there. But we've talked about Xero before. I'm definitely we're a predominantly Xero firm, but I've seen over, I guess, more recent years, Xero trying to broaden, and they're losing that focus in the key area. And actually that's hurting the product, in my opinion. I just want them to actually really deepen what they're really good at.
I think also, just to add to the other comments as well, is that, and this probably leads on from what Stacey was saying, is that sometimes the way that you find apps is you just get lost in kind of like the the Google rabbit hole. You know, you pick up one app and then you write, what else does this connect into? And it's like, oh geez, right, there's 300 products here. Start going through that, and you're like, oh, that looks really interesting, right, I'm going to have a look at that, and then that will connect into something else. And so you can literally pick up an ecosystem and start drilling down into it. And that works both internally and externally for the client facing work that we do. I mean, in terms of what vendors need to do in terms of engaging with us and helping us in terms of that process, number one, definitely don't be salesy. Like I'm totally with everyone else on that. Like it's a massive turn off, and I'm really good at ghosting people. So you can spam me all you like and ring me, but I'm really good at giving you the red button and just ignoring you. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Don't come to me with ridiculous deals like 100 licenses for £1 a month and stuff. Again, totally not interested, because there's no value in that. I think one of the other things is we need time to appraise systems and products properly. So like a 15-minute demo, as exciting and great as that is, it only piques my interest if you show me something that's really interesting and solves a problem. Like there's a product here in the UK that's now going through a transition that has been god awful at selling its products, because the people who've been selling it don't understand the pain points that clients have. And if you're in our market, you'll know exactly who that is. And so they demo bits of the product that nobody's interested in, and that's like a massive loss, because when you've got people around the table, particularly for larger firms where maybe I might screen products first and then roll it out to a wider group of people to then have another look. Like if you're going to waste 5 people's time around a table or on a Zoom call, that's of no interest, and you're definitely not going to engender yourself to the people around the room to make a decision.
Out of curiosity there, John, and we've touched on the sales process a little bit across multiple conversations. I'm curious to know what do you want in terms of a sales process? You want a demo at some point. You want to have a conversation at some point, or have access to somebody that you can have a conversation with when it suits you. What about the onboarding, the training? Like what does that process look like ideally?
I think I just want a bit of TLC, really.
Yeah.
I kind of I want to clearly, if I'm interested in a product, I will reach out direct to somebody and say, look, I want to see this. But also I want a trial. Like some of the products don't have trials, and that's of no use to me, right? Like an hour's demo or whatever it might be is great to kind of pique my interest. But then when you say, right, can I get a trial? No. Okay, well, I'm out. I'm not interested. If I can't.
Also, John, a week's long trial just does not cut it for a big firm. You need a proper long trial to test this, because it'll just be yourself, and also bring others in to play around with it. You just can't manage timeline of just a week to get people involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think for mid-sized firms, 3 months trials is like the minimum, because particularly if you're dealing with a firm that doesn't have dedicated resource, because they're going to be concentrating on client work on the side, maybe playing with this in the evenings or the weekend when they got the chance, and then they want to bring other team members in to get their opinion. So it's a massive challenge for us.
The other thing that I had that I wanted to find the chance to say at some point is let us at your product managers, or ideally your devs. And I know that salespeople are probably tasked specifically with protecting their product managers and devs from us. But honestly, that's the wrong way around. If you don't let me pass to your salesperson, and I get that sales guys are good at what they do. And if anything, the salesperson needs to know the product backwards. I need to be able to ask you a question. They've got to be able to answer it on the spot. If they go, I don't know, I'll check with someone and come back to you. I haven't got time. Like John's saying, we haven't got time for that. We need to, if you guys want to be talking to the decision makers, then we need to be talking to your decision makers. And if we say, is this on your roadmap and how far away is it? Oh, it's there, but it doesn't cut it. We need someone with the answers so that we're not wasting either of our time, I guess.
Yeah, just to add to that.
Sorry, Gina, just quick comment, and I'll let you talk. I just think, Stacey, on what you said as far as salespeople trying to protect the product people, for the most part, from everything that I've seen for a lot of startups, they don't protect them. They just don't talk to each other. It's quite separate, and potentially it's part of the problem that you see from your perspective. But yeah, sorry, Jen, I'll let you add your perspective.
No, yeah, I was just going to agree with Stacey. Where when you look at onboarding, especially when you look at a firm our size, I see it as a marriage. So whenever a new app comes on board, I say, right, we are married, me and you together for the next 6 months. And it's about really embedding in the firm. So I think when vendors come to me and say, tell your staff to watch this video and away you go, I just go, this is going to be a disaster. It's just not that simple. I look at some of the implementations we've done in the past, and sometimes it's been, we have shown them once, then we have to show them again, and then they go to do a job and they say, let me show you again. And I think that's actually great, so that the more you show, the more you educate, and the more you're in with the team, the better the adoption of the product. And then by default, the natural sales of the product will happen externally. So I look at all the apps and our growth of our apps internally, and the apps that we have like dedicated hours and hours of training and follow-up calls, that's where we've had the best adoption, because I think accountants aren't designed to sell software. It's not their job. They're here to help clients and solve the client's problem. But where they see it solving their problem, they will naturally promote it. Just like I naturally promote a product to Stacey, and Stacey naturally promotes a product to me. It happens organically, and that's where the sale comes from. That's that organic discussion that, oh, have you seen this? This was awesome. Have a look. So, and I also, just to add to Stacey's point on sales directors, large firms don't need a sales director. They need an account manager, and they are two very, very, very different roles. When you're a big firm, you need someone to look after you. You need, as John said, the TLC. I need my husband next to me for the journey. We need to hold hands and we need to go through everything together. So it's really not about, I really get frustrated when it's, how do we add more orgs or files or whatever you want to call them? That's not the goal. The goal is to make sure that our staff know exactly what they're doing, so they hit the ground running every day. And when they know how to do that, your sales happen naturally. So we don't have to go to market as a lot of apps would call it. It will happen organically.
I'd also say that probably every big firm has a different approach to how they do internal training and how they do rollout. So, for example, at our firm, we would want you to kind of train a few core people, and then those would train everyone else. We don't want you to come on site and train everyone, because we find a better buy-in if we're doing the training ourselves on a bigger product. Whereas I know I've come across other big firms where actually they don't want to do that. They don't have the time or skill set. They just want someone to come in and do it all for them. So you have to be adaptable in how you approach it, and you have to understand what the needs of that big firm and really ask the right questions early on. But something I'll also just touch on, I guess this is more early on in the relationship. If you're trying to get in with a firm, go to events, find out who's going there, and then go and meet them. We're very personable people. If you build a relationship with us, we're going to want to learn more about your product. We're going to potentially, in a way, feel guilty that we've not engaged with you already and want to talk to you more. So go and meet us. The people that come and do that and put the effort in, we, from my perspective, have a lot more time for, and we want to actually, we can feel their passion and why they care about the product, and with that we get dragged along in the journey.
100%, Ryan. I'm actively choosing products where I like the people who work there, because it's not about, I think Simon Sinek probably, as a quote, says, businesses don't do business with businesses, people do business with people. So yeah, exactly what you're saying, Ryan. Engage on a one-on-one level and make friends first, rather than just trying to flog something.
Yeah, free beer helps, but I think I've got question marks about Gina's marital relationships, if 6 months is kind of like the timeline she's looking at. But I think also that relationship thing is really important, because I think big firms in particular do give quite honest feedback, and so don't get really shitty if we say, oh, we don't like your product, or we don't like this feature, or it doesn't work for us, because we're just being honest. And actually, some of us do actually understand the market, we understand the product, we understand the pain points, and so we are trying to provide like valuable advice. And I've had a few run-ins with vendors in the past where I've basically been brutally honest and said it's not good enough, or this product's way off where it needs to be. And sometimes they just pull back and go, and it's like, well, that's it. I'm not gonna choose this product. Yeah, I'm gonna go elsewhere and pick something else. But I'm totally with Stacey. Like I buy from the people I like in the marketplace. I buy from the products that I see are a really good fit for our firm, or a really good fit for our clients. And we do a ton of research on products to make sure that we get the right things.
We one of the things that I said to Jack was, we need agility and speed from vendors without you guys necessarily expecting it in return from us. And so I think, yeah, exactly like you're saying, John, I want to know that I'm working with someone who will hear the problems, commit to fixing them, without necessarily expecting us to move in a quick way. I know that's very
Actually, that's probably the sentence that summarizes the engagement with the big firms the best. I think we need, we'll call on you and go, we've got this problem, we need someone to act fast or immediately, and you need to be able to do that. But hopefully, and this is what I guess we'd expect, you would have built that relationship up with us over time, that you kind of understand that with us. But yeah, echoing, I guess, what you said as well, I have discontinued relationships with apps or software where they've basically just gone, well, they've got egotistical. So we're trying to give honest feedback, not even necessarily for us. We're trying to sell their product into a client, and they're basically dismissing it. Like, well, we don't have time to have this fight. We'll find something else that solves the problem.
The other thing probably to understand too is that as a bigger firm, like if something goes wrong, I've got 380 people yelling at me. So you as a vendor are hearing from me, and it might sound like I'm being dramatic on the day when I'm like, this is a big deal, can you fix this? But you got to understand, I'm protecting you from letting loose my 380 people at your support team, right? So again, that relationship's important, and that, knowing that I'll have someone who'll jump on it and fix it if I say it's a big deal is critical.
Yeah, just to echo on Stacey's point, 500 people screaming at you isn't fun. It's not, you feel like the meat in the sandwich. And I think one of the things that it's all about honesty. So I really get frustrated with vendors when they say, oh, we don't want to, have a pop-up or an alert that says what's going on in the product. And I think that's because of the vision or how it appears. It's not, at that point, it's not about vision or how it appears. It's about being transparent to the end user. And if I'm getting screamed at 5 times 550 and I unleash on your support team, it's not going to benefit either of us. None of us are winning. So at that point, I think it's probably a little bit about, as Ryan said, like eating your ego a bit and just saying, right, we need to admit we've got a problem, and we need to communicate to the users and get the message out there without worrying about how it appears or how it looks.
I had something very small. I know this will be kind of post-engagement, but a massive annoyance for me is, we understand that at times you need to increase prices, especially at the moment. Gives big warning to your big firms that that's happening, because especially if we're passing on the cost, we have to go through a whole communication plan with our clients, and those ones where it's kind of absorbed in other services, we have to try and work out the timing of when we're going to increase those fees anyway. So yeah, definitely give us as much notice as possible, and when you would be doing that, because everyone has to increase their prices at times.
And be aware, I suppose, of the impact on price would be the other thing I'd say there. So like I had a vendor say to me once, oh, it's only $2 per client per month. So, and what we were talking about was the ability to add taxpayers to this particular app. It's only $2 per client per month. And I said, yeah, mate, but if I let my team at this and they import all of our taxpayers on one of our tax agents, and we've got 6, that's an 84 grand bill. Like my head will roll for that. So no, I'm not going to it's only $2 per client per month. Sure. But you've got to give us the security granularity back to that again about, saying only certain people can add new clients or only certain people can whatever.
Yeah.
John,
sorry, just to jump in because we're pretty much in the end now. I just want to add one quick last question before Jack wraps up. Again, maybe it's just me, but potentially some people on this webinar and people that are going to listen to the recording, especially the early stage startups, are going to be like, well, you know what, fuck it. Okay, I'm not going to work with the big firm. It's too much hard work. So what do you recommend for those startups early stage in particular, that when should they work with you guys? When is it worth you basically need to look 2-3 years ahead if you really want to do it properly. Like, when is it worth doing it? Very, very briefly, if each one of you want to touch it, and Jack will wrap up.
I mean, I think.
Go on, John.
Yeah, go on, Ryan. Go on, Ryan.
I feel I've got
gives me a chance to think.
So I would say from day one, you should start. If your end goal is that you want to get in with bigger firms, from day one, you should start engaging. You should not have any expectations that you're going to win clients, but you should be understanding their pain points, their problems, and building those relationships. You don't need to do it with all of them. You need to pick a few, and you could go to all of them, but pick a few that you're actually getting good relationship with, that understand your product and understand the problem. Try and, I guess, as we've said throughout, listen to what we're saying. Don't sell to us. We just want to solve a problem, and just make sure that you're keeping us updated. Chase us, because we do just disappear, but don't expect things. Just more remind us that you're there. And then, I think the other thing is, if you do get in with some big firms, a lot of us probably end up speaking at certain events and people listen to us. So if you've made an incredibly good impression with us, it could be that actually we help you win smaller businesses as well. And that's not meant as an ego thing. I mean, like John, I think has had 3 talks at different shows over the last month. So people will, if we're talking about the software, people will come across it. If we've had a great experience, people will trust us.
Yeah, I agree. I think not turning away from the beginning, but having that expectation on both sides of the fence when you walk in to meet each other for the first time, saying, I'm new and this is a learning curve for me, and just really building the expectation on both sides that nothing is going to be, Rome wasn't built in a day. But what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and how are you going to get there? I think the one thing that is so important is, I think Stacey touched on it before, product roadmap. That is so critical, because there are certain things that you can live without and say, it doesn't matter, I can live without it because I know it's coming in 6 months. But where that roadmap is not clear, where that roadmap is gray, or where that roadmap becomes this fluid document that changes right before you, that's where you lose the trust. And for me, it's all about trust. If I trust you to do business with you, you'll trust me. And if I'm accountable to what I say I'm going to be accountable to, then you need to be accountable as well. And, shit does happen. I get it. Things happen, COVID, all these crazy things, interest rates are going through the roof. Like, crazy things do happen. But if you're not on the same level and not holding each other accountable and not setting those expectations clearly from the beginning, then I think it's kind of doomed from there.
John and Stacey, got anything to add to that before I wrap up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, similar to what both the guys have said, start from, if you want to go big, then have a view to it and don't build yourself out of the possibility. I think the number of times I've spoken to vendors and I say, okay, well, your product's great, but here's our 3 deal breakers that we would have to have in place before we can implement. And they go, well, we can't really cater for that because we didn't build it that way. Well, shame, but I can't work with you. Like security granularity especially is one that always, well, we haven't built it that way, so now we would have to totally redo X, Y, Z to make that work. Well, sorry, like the deal breaker. Find out, maybe that's the best advice. From day one, find out what the big firm deal breakers are and at least be prepared for those, even if the finer features take time.
Yeah, and I think there's maybe a difference if you're delivering practice tech as opposed to maybe like client-facing tech as well. Practice tech is an area which is in a massive transition, certainly in the UK, and a lot of firms here in the UK are stuck with a lot of legacy and wanting to shift as much as they can to fully integrated solutions, fully cloud, etc. So I'm always dipping in and out of that market to understand where products are at and what's going on, and so I want those relationships with people telling me this is coming next year, this is coming in 6 months time, etc., so that I can continue to make decisions and be agile in terms of our strategy, so that I'm seeing where the products are going and seeing where the market's going, and getting a real understanding. And so for some products, I can tell you, we've implemented something in the last couple of months that's taken 7 years for me to roll out in the practice. 7 bloody years, right? That's ridiculous. When it comes to client-facing tech, we could probably be a bit more agile if it's a solution that works at mass market level. But if it's something really niche, then we might just have to wait until we see that client and see something coming up. But yeah, totally engage early. Keep us abreast, keep us up to date with what's going on, engage with us, ask our advice, ask for our skills and where things should be going, because we do talk. I mean, that's like the really important thing. Like, gone are the days, like sort of 5-10 years ago, where particularly mid-sized firms didn't talk to anyone outside of their little hemisphere of what they were doing. Like, we talk to each other regularly. We're all going to events, we're having chats with vendors, we're having chats with each other and sort of say, that product's a bit shit, this one's amazing. And we do make recommendations within our network, absolutely. I've recommended plenty of products to other firms, other accountants in practice, other businesses, because I really like what they do, but it might not be the right fit for us at that point in time.
Awesome. Great way to wrap things up. And I think that point you made, and various people have made kind of different points on this same perspective with respect to the big firm has changed over the past 5-10 years around what are the benefits and challenges that are faced by it. So the benefit was always traditionally huge amount of licenses locked in for 10 years at a time. Once you get the deal over the line, you're sweet for a very long time. But the challenges were obviously that it was, you know, difficult to implement, all of those things, not flexible. And it feels like although, you know, your firms aren't as agile as maybe a one-person firm or a 10-employee firm, the trajectory is towards that, which is you're not locking in. There's no guarantees for 10 years at a time. But at the same time, there are still big opportunities for vendors if they treat you guys the right way. They give you the, you know, access to the right people. They take you through the sales and onboarding process in the right way. They treat you with care, and they let you have the input into the roadmap that you really need. So I hope that's been really valuable for everyone who's taken the time out to join us today. Thanks for your time, guys, for being on the panel as well. Really appreciate it. Very interesting conversation as always, as Johan and I get access to a lot more than the average person. So thank you very much. And if you're not already signed up, we do have one final webinar booked in for the 26th of July at the same time, which is really focused on the importance of the right integrations, which I know has been pretty key to the conversation today as well. So thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
See ya.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.